right, awesome. So, welcome guys to the first episode of Nostalgia Nights. Basically, just look back at how Smash used to be back in the day, in what many people refer to as the golden age of Melee, but also even the days before that when we were really just getting ourselves established as a community and stuff like that. Here with me, I have a very special guest, Wife, who a lot of you know, of course, from the Smash Brothers documentary, which I just got done reviewing, and he was obviously very prominently featured in that. Had a lot of good stuff to say about the documentary. So I guess we can start off, Wife, just with your general thoughts about the doc and what it really meant for you individually and for the community as a whole.
I was thinking very recently. I heard a story about Brad Pitt saw Chuck Palahniuk is his name. He wrote Fight Club, the book, and Brad Pitt stops Chuck on the street and he says, "Thank you for the best fucking role of my career." And I feel like that. I feel like what Samox did for me, as far as just giving me attention and getting my face and my name and my stories and my thoughts out there, is more than I was able to do, or at least as much as I was able to do in several years of hard work. So I owe him in great debt for getting my voice out there, which is to say nothing of how much he's changed the scene. So you asked me how it's affected me greatly. I think I get recognized more from the documentary than from years of going to MLGs and doing commentary, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. No, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think you might be able to agree with me here that I don't think we really had any clue how big the documentary would end up getting. It was kind of just, this guy seems like he knows what he's doing as far as putting a good documentary together, but how really didn't know whether there would be this audience for it. And the fact that it took off like it did was, I think, a big surprise to all of us.
Totally. I mean, not only I didn't think he was going to finish. I mean, a lot of people start projects like this, they don't get finished. And so when Sunmax came over, I didn't think I was going to see a finished product, let alone that it was going to blow up the way it did. It
Absolutely.
astounds me consistently.
Yeah, for sure. And so I'm gonna have just some old school videos playing in the background here. Nothing too crazy, just some of the old montages that Bach recorded and stuff like that, while we just kind of talk about how it used to be in those days. And one thing I wanted to discuss off the bat with you, Wife, is the biggest thing that I miss about old school tournaments was just kind of the atmosphere was a little more electric when you didn't know who the established best players already were going into an event. You had an idea of, there's these players who people say are the best, but it was never that you actually knew for sure that the guy you're sitting down to play was going to whoop you or whatever, as it might be the case today. I think that back then there was this kind of inherent competitive vibe that you got from going to a tournament with so much to prove, not knowing how good anyone was. And I think that that's something that it's not really possible in today's atmosphere because we do have this established pecking order of who the best is. But I know that you got started a little later than I did, but do you kind of remember that vibe from the early days of tournaments?
I'd agree with you for the very early days. I think even by the time the golden era got established, I think you had a pretty good idea of. I mean, if you were top 50, you knew the other people in the top 50,
Right.
and I think that was pretty established. But I do agree, even from the very beginning, when I was coming in, as you were already somewhat established, that it was a complete mystery. You didn't know everybody. You didn't know everybody's tags. Social media wasn't really established the way it was. There were a lot of surprises, and people drove from, especially kind of the Midwest, the middle of nowhere. People arrive and you don't know who they are, and yeah, that was definitely exciting. You didn't know.
Right.
And when's the last time that somebody had a breakout performance that you didn't know their name beforehand? Can we recall a good example of that?
Yeah, I mean it's certainly rare in this day and age, but I remember specifically at this tournament when Dark Rain showed up out of the blue. I remember I was supposed to team with Neo, and I ended up having to look for a teammate on the morning of because Neo flaked on me, and it was Dark Rain who I ended up teaming with. I'm like, okay, this random like Falcon player from the Midwest. These guys are saying he's good. I really don't believe that a Falcon that isn't Isaiah is good, but he ended up winning the whole thing, like surprising the hell out of all of us. So that was certainly crazy.
Yeah, the team was Dark Dude. I remember it very well. You had Dark Dude. The teams were mixed up that day. You had Dark Dude, and then Husband and I didn't team, so I teamed
Right.
with Aho
Yeah, yeah.
because Husband and Aura were going to team at MLG Orlando. What was Azin obliged to? Why didn't he team with you?
I think I had agreed to team with Neo in advance, and that's why Asin ended up going with Chu. Maybe I forget who did team with at that tournament. It was probably Chu, but I think because I had been obligated to team with Neo, Asin went with Chu, and then on the morning of, Neo flaked on me, so had to go with Dark Rain. But we ended up taking the whole thing, which was pretty crazy. I definitely was a shocker for someone from a region that we already kind of knew was weak. Midwest, even back then, we kind of realized was probably the weakest region, and Dark Rain like really surprised us at that tournament. So
Yeah, and then he is a player who's shown some real longevity and doing various degrees of well at Evo and other tournaments when I didn't think I'd ever see him again. After Golden Age died down, there were a number of people I never thought I would see again. And so to see Dark Rain on the stream at Evo is huge for me.
yeah, it was really impressive when he took out Silent Wolf. I think even more impressive is that Silent Wolf lost that early, but ended up coming back the way he did all the way to top eight. But it was definitely crazy when Dark Rain did that. He ended up placing relatively low overall, but even just performing like that in the one big stream match he did have was pretty impressive. Silent Wolf is actually fairly old school himself. I think he's not quite as old school as Dark Rain at all, but I remember him being the early example of the all mind game or all tech skill player with not very good mind games. Of course, he's evolved tremendously in that regard, and now he has both the mind games and the tech skill to boot. But he's pretty old school too. A lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, I remember his name from a long time ago. Listen, I wonder for the people at home, are you familiar with these videos that Bach did? I mean, do these videos get around, or is most of this foreign to you guys?
That's a
And as
good
a follow-up
question.
question, as the chat catches up, why are there no montages anymore? There's hype videos, which we didn't
Right.
used to have. It's like they're
Yeah.
all done beforehand and not afterhand.
That's a good question. I wonder if it has to do with people just being familiar with the tournament experience already, so the montages aren't as necessary. I really like the fact that the montages did convey that tournament experience and give you an idea of what it's like to be at a tournament without actually being there. So,
Yeah, well, for me, it was about preserving memories. I mean,
right.
you can go back and watch the streams, but they're done so well these days. All you get is play, which is what they're aimed to do, and that's great. But if you go back and watch the videos from Bomb 3, the montage that's ending right now,
Yeah.
was it 3 or was it 4, Chillin?
That was three.
Yeah, Bomb 3. If you go back and watch the videos, they're just a camcorder that Bach is holding, so you can hear.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can like hear like husband and Asin shouting at each other. You can hear people rooting for each other and getting upset during the matches. So it's like a little just like being there for a second as opposed to just the matchup. So that was inferior overall to the videos we have now, but it
Right.
offered a certain something, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and it would be cool to see more of that kind of stuff get released today. But it looks like a lot of people haven't seen most of it, so that's pretty
Yeah.
interesting. You guys, I can definitely put the link out there for Box channel. He has a lot of if you're into this kind of old school Smash stuff, that's definitely like required viewing pretty much.
hmm Yeah, and they're easy too. I mean, they're two music and they're 3 to 4 minutes each.
Right.
So there's not much investment to watch them.
Yeah, for sure. And there there's a lot of really funny memories in here. I really like the FC3 montage because it shows a lot of the out of game stuff that went down. Like right now, you see the dodgeball, and I don't know. FC was always the most fun tournament to me because it was kind of just like a Smash experience. It wasn't just you going to an event and then playing all day and then you go back to your hotel room and sleep or whatever. It was all Smashers all the time. Like you could have Wes put the man sauce on your face at 3 a.m. or whatever it might be, but I really like the fact that it was kind of a Smash experience in that way.
Yeah. Well, I think part of that is because we had fewer people, fewer matches to go through. Again, if given the choice, of course, I'd rather have more people at tournaments. But when you've got 600 people, 800 people at a tournament, it
Yeah,
takes every second of the day that you can squeeze in to get all those matches through. But what
that's
do you
true
think
too.
FC3 had? Like 180, I want to say?
Yeah, it was a little under 200, I believe.
Yeah, so you can play and get all your matches in, and there's time for regional crew battles. That's been going into the wee hours of the morning. There's time for dodgeball. There's time for torpedo ball. Remember how much fun torpedo ball
Torpedo Ball
was?
was so awesome, man.
Yeah, we got really competitive with that stuff too. And that's the great
Right.
part is you play these games and you realize that these people you're surrounded with are competitive in every aspect of life.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a ton of fun. They also shout out to the Kishes. They just did a great job of budgeting everything. As you guys can see, there was food provided at the venue. It was included as part of the venue fee, which you never see now, like a tournament including food as part of its venue fee. But the housing was included. You could just find a spot in the church to sleep. Of course, that usually required like a sleeping bag or something like that. But regardless, it was, I believe, the first couple of years were $50 or $60 for 3 nights. That includes entry fee, the food, the housing, everything. So that was really incredible for its time.
Yeah, it was great to have everyone sleep in one place. That's awesome.
Yeah,
So
for
much
sure.
fun.
So I guess wife had a good idea of opening up the discussion to questions from the chat. So if anyone has questions, feel free to ask them, and wife and I will answer them to the best of our ability.
Well, I saw somebody ask, how is it that MTK is the old school player that stayed on top? Well, for one, I mean, he's old school is, I think, debatable applied to him. I mean, I don't think that he
Yeah,
really reached his peak until as the golden age was waning. It's
right,
not quite the same, and I don't think it's that he's stayed good. I think it's that he's good and has stayed active.
right.
I think that's the trick. I mean, can you name a player who stayed active but then got worse?
Yeah, I mean, it's as far as old school players go, if we're considering old school to mean just like pre-brawl period, then M2K would be considered old school by that respect, but he's pretty much the only Melee player that continued playing at that point because that when Brawl came out, that was the point when 90% of Melee players who had played for most of Melee's duration already just decided, okay, it's time to move on. And obviously there was a resurgence recently, but Mewtwo King was still playing Melee that whole time and still keeping his skill sharp. So that's a big reason why he's one of the main ones that's continued to excel.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to his dedication, but that's what's most impressive about long tier. And I see I got a lot of good questions coming in. Somebody asked Chillin, what was your impression of Ken when you first met him? Do you remember it go at Game Over?
Yeah, I thought he seemed just quiet. I didn't get to talk to him too much, but from the brief discussions I did have with him, I mean, there was definitely a bit of trash talk between us. So there was already kind of that animosity building, but that was just my initial impression of him was that he was surprisingly quiet.
Well, that he was. I also saw a good question. It was how old are the people at these tournaments when we were there, which is so interesting because I was thinking about that. Is that when I went to my first tournament, which was my first national was Game Over. My first tournament was Liber Diet, Jay Tanik's house. I feel like I was among the oldest there, more or less, when
Right.
I was, I think, 18 years old. So at 18, 19, I was the oldest, and I just kept playing for all these years, and now I'm still among the oldest. I'm
Right.
almost 30.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's that there was always that age range. We've all been growing up together. And then, people, of course, who have been born since the game came out are now competing.
Right. Yeah, no, that's crazy to think about. I definitely think that the age range has been moving up just because, there are people like us. Obviously, I was one of the younger people back then. So now, I mean, now I'm 25, which is getting up there. So it's like the age range has moved up, but there's still always young new people that are coming out and competing at age, 13, 14. So even now we're seeing those levels of people competing in Melee. Not as much, I would say, as like as Smash 4, obviously, because that game is new, and they're able to get into it now easier. But uh, I definitely think, like, I don't know, maybe in 10 years we'll see Mango's son competing at a tournament.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why not. I honestly don't. Sean, I'm seeing so many good questions. It's difficult to pick them out. Have you seen one that you thought would be good to answer?
Yeah, this is tough. Who was I closest with other than the H2IL crew? That's a good question, and I would have to say Team Ben probably overall. There was a period
Yes.
actually in MLG 2006 when essentially the rest of H2IL had quit, and I ended up joining Team Ben briefly. We were sponsored by White Castle. I don't know if you remember that, wife. That
Of
was that
course.
was good times.
Of
Do
course,
you
of
want to
course.
discuss the White Castle sponsorship briefly?
Yeah, so I must have written 500 letters. And by letters, I mostly mean emails. But I contacted just companies by the hundreds to try to get a sponsorship. I wanted to be the first sponsored player, and the best I could come up with, or I could get, was White Castle, which was a great sponsor. But they gave us, I think, T-shirts and like a $50 stipend for gas. We didn't go anywhere, but it was fun.
Right.
But then after that, Chillin, you and Azin, as well as Husband and I, and Hugs and King, were all on crew. Would you call it? Is it a crew, a sponsorship, a group?
I guess a team. I don't know. I'm not sure how I would describe that.
Yeah, it was our brief foray into esports right before MLG dropped us, and then we eventually became real esports many years later,
Right.
and that was called Carbon, Team
Yeah, yeah.
Carbon.
Yeah, we were briefly on Carbon, and I remember it was funny because Carbon actually swept the playoffs because they won the Halo 4v4, and then I think Karma was like
Karma.
dominant at the free for all, so they won both the Halo events, and then Azin and I took teams, and Azin, of course, with that comeback over Ken, took singles as well. So the Carbon sweep at MLG New York playoffs, that was pretty cool.
All right. Do you wanna pick an easy one? I saw this. What were some good other good Samuses during the Golden Age? And there were a fair amount of Samuses here and there. There's
Yeah.
also Wadi Man.
Yeah, Wadi. Jatanic's a little bit older school. He was probably the original, along with Wes. Those two were the original good Samuses of the East Coast, at least. I think Hugs was a little bit later when Hugs got established because it was kind of as Wes was falling off was when Hugs started to get established himself. So oh
And
04, oh
don't
05.
forget that of the 8 people that went into the pro bracket at MLG Las Vegas, the championships,
Hmm.
that golden era, Hugs was the wild card. He was number 8.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And that was pretty impressive. I saw a good question here. As players in the era with the more stages, what did you personally think of when they set up the new stage selection layout with a lot fewer legal stages?
Well, as a Peach player, it sucks. Because I had that advantage. It's like, oh, you banned Brinstar? Well, guess what? I still have Mute City.
Right,
The options were always there. So it wasn't good for me as a competitor, as selfishly speaking, but it's great for the competitive era.
right.
I'm surprised we still have as many stages on as we do.
I agree. No, I was very happy with it. I was never a huge fan of those crazy stages from a competitive point of view, especially things like I don't know, randomly killing yourself on Rainbow Cruise or Poke Floats because of something that you didn't expect or whatever it might be. I don't know. Just all that type of stuff never really appealed to me, so I was very happy when they limited the stage list a lot, and I definitely think it's better from a competitive point of view.
Not to mention, if we're thinking in terms of spectatorship, and anybody who follows me at all knows that I'm always thinking in terms of spectatorship, it's hard to say, hey, come watch our game. No, I know it's not Halo, I know it's not Madden, but it's serious. And then you're playing on Rainbow Crows, and you're playing on Poke Floats,
Right.
and it's hard for anyone to take you seriously.
Yeah, I agree. It just looks like a more legitimate competitive game when you're playing on a more legitimate stage.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the characters are the characters. I wouldn't have it any other way, but if we can put them on a serious playing field, that's probably the best.
Agreed. What sort of character diversity was present in these days? I think it was definitely a lot more, but it wasn't too dissimilar from what you see today in that the concentration was definitely toward the top. And this is speaking in terms of really like 2004, 2005 and beyond. If we go way back to 2002, 2003, then the diversity was even greater. But I think the tiers emerged fairly quickly. And in 2004, 2005, starting around then, you already started to see the sort of 7 or 8 competitive viable characters that you're seeing now, just with a slightly more diverse range overall. Like, definitely saw more Link back in the day than you do now.
Now, well, a lot more Marth. That's what I remember. And I liked it that way, and I'm looking forward to the era of Marth coming back. I think it's
Agreed.
going to happen.
This part of the video when he's highlighting husbands Johns. Oh, that's great. The
Good.
different fonts.
All
Um,
right, let's see. When we realized Link was bad. Oh God, he's been bad as long as I can remember. I feel like people fought it, you know what I mean, and wanted
yeah,
to
I agree.
pretend it wasn't true, but we knew it.
I think we realized it pretty early on, but we just sort of a lot of people just wanted Link to be good and tried their best because he was already the worst in 64. But it's such a fan favorite character that people really want to make him work, and so we saw that for a few years in Melee. But it was pretty clear pretty quickly that Link was
Yeah.
pretty bad.
People have asked a little bit about Ken's stint on Survivor, and you and I, Chillin, what we have in common is we've been enemies of Ken in varying
Right.
degrees of actual animosity and
Yeah.
just playful rivalry
Right.
over the years. I can say for me, I just rolled my eyes when I heard and never watched. What about you?
Oh, really? I actually did watch. I guess I don't know if I'm just a sucker for reality TV, but I found it really interesting because I had never watched Survivor before, so it
Yeah.
was kind of a cool way to get into the series. I was kind of secretly rooting against Ken because I still kind of hated him at the time, but I think I uh, I ended up being really impressed with he was kind of playing it really smart. And hold on, I'm trying to pull up another video to watch here. But I mean, I think overall it was good exposure for the community, regardless of how you look at it.
Someone asked if I still keep in touch with husband. Yeah, in fact, he's in my wedding party. He'll be standing up next to me in a tux in 2 months when I get married.
Awesome,
So you better believe it.
nice, and
What was our
congratulations.
reaction to Brawl's Royce? I mean, Chillin and I both played Brawl. I think Chillin for a little longer than I did, but
Yeah,
we both tried. We both wanted it. What do you
right.
think?
Yeah, Asin and I got the Japanese version of Brawl, so we got it a little early, and we still played it to try to make it like Melee as much as possible. We played it very aggressively, and we had success locally for the first few months, but I think it became very clear very quickly that the game was just suited to defensive play, and so we ended up not not really delving into it much further. Asin kept playing a little longer than I did as well, but I stopped like a few months in.
Well, I got the advanced copy too. So excited about it. And I think partly because I hadn't been burned before, and partly because we were younger, maybe more naive. I don't know. But when the game came out and it was bad, I was like, this must just be me. I must be confused. There's no way that Smash would do this to us. I had trouble believing it, so I ignored it for a while. I ignored the signs until it finally became clear. But for me as well, it was like 3 or 4 months. I think I attended one tournament, and after that, it just stopped.
Yeah. No, it was pretty sad.
Okay, this is a good one. People have asked us what our peaks of skill was, and I'm really curious to hear your answer, Chillman, because you had a more interesting competitive career than I have. So I'll go first since mine's shorter. And also that the peak of my skill, without a doubt, was the golden era. Without a doubt, was MLG. I think during that time, if someone asked, no, I definitely was in top five. I probably wasn't even really top 10, but I was certainly scraping it. But that's, my best time playing my best. And then since then, I haven't even really been notably competitive. That was my time, and that's how I wanted it to be. I remember very fondly, unlike you, Chillin, you were already doing well when I came on the scene, and as I
Right.
recall, you placed ninth at EVO 2014.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good performance, Evo, and it was nice to actually perform to my potential at a national. But at the same time, I was still just, on the cusp of that elite level. The top eight really would have been, an incredible accomplishment for me just to show that I was capable of getting to that main stage. Because it was kind of the same story back in '06, '05, '06. It was that clearly you could see it kind of in my gameplay in teams. The fact that I was able to compete with Ken, Isaiah, and Azen on the same level as they were in teams. That I had the potential as a player. I just didn't like actually perform that way in tournament in singles usually, and so that's why it's kind of sad for me to think about that I'm still like right on the cusp of greatness. But it's a great motivating factor for me too. I had my AMA on Reddit today, and a question for me was, why do I think I'm, out of all the old school players that have come back and tried to compete, why do I think I'm the one that's had the most success? And it's probably because they all, for the most part, reached that pinnacle back in the day. They reached that elite level, and they don't really have anything to prove at this point. They kind of were at the top, and they had that, but I was always right there at the edge. When we started the power rankings, which is an interesting subject in itself. I just contacted Hugs basically one day and was like, there's no real unified way of ranking players, but what if we just kind of took our opinions and balanced them? I contacted Hugs because I wanted to immediately balance the bias of East Coast versus West Coast, and then I ended up getting more panelists, such as Wife ended up joining. But it was just a top 25 ranking of who we thought just based on overall skill, not necessarily purely on tournament results, because we considered, anomalies like Azen going all link at a tournament or something like that. We took that into consideration. So it was the first panel-based power rankings of its kind, and it was fairly accurate, I would say, for its time as well. But on that, I was consistently ranked between 6 and 10, so never quite in the top 5, but never, that far down either. So I'm still kind of working on breaking into that elite level, I think.
Interesting. I think those power rankings we did, I think we did them the same way as Melee Army is doing them as far as the ranking system. Is that your understanding as well?
In a way, the way we did it was we actually ranked the players. We didn't use a point-based system. Melee Army actually has a point-based system, and rather than rank the players in an actual ranking list, you just give each player a ranking out of 10, a rating out of 10, and that rating is average, and that's what produces the Melee Army list. So it is different from the way we did it. I kind of don't like it because I think that the scale, even though he defines the scale pretty clearly, it's not. There's still some room for interpretation. I don't have the scale handy, but it's something like 10 is the best player, 9 is a consistent top level player that makes top 8 at majors or something like that. 8 might be a player that consistently gets top 16s at regionals or majors or some. I don't remember the specifics, but I still think there's some room for interpretation in what you can set the rating for a player. And so because of that, the averages might be skewed and it might end up changing the list. That's why I prefer the way we did it, which was just to make a list of rankings and then average them out.
I agree. I agree. Somebody asked about the Chew moving to Cali thing, and then someone echoed it. I don't know, Chillin, do you remember? Because the thing to remember is we were also younger, and I'm older. Look back at how young I was. I was a hothead.
Yeah.
I had a lot of enemies. In
Right.
fact, if I can go on a super quick divergence here, and then we'll go back to that. I was thinking just yesterday how in the Golden Era and just below the Golden Era, I had so many enemies. As every tournament I went to and every thread I was in on the Smash boards, there were going to be several people I was worried about running into.
Right.
Because I didn't like them, they didn't like me, and it was serious rivalry. It wasn't playful,
Yeah.
but it was bad.
Yeah.
And now I think I've gotten that list down to 0. I think I have 0 enemies now.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that, we were a lot younger. It was a lot easier to take some of this stuff too seriously and stuff like that. So I actually hated some people back in the day. I'm not gonna deny that. So when Chew first went to Cali, eventually, even during Chew's Cali phase, I became friends with him again, sort of. But when he first went to Cali, I was mad at him. I was upset. I was like, how can you claim that your loyalty is to West Coast when the main reason I had an issue with it was because we were the ones who trained him. We were part of the reason why he was so good. Obviously, he had a lot of natural talent, but part of the reason he was so good was because he played with me and Azen all the time. And the fact that he kind of just threw all that away and said that he was now loyal to West Coast, which first of all didn't even make sense because he still lived in Virginia. So that was another reason I was mad at it, is that it just seemed unwarranted in the first place. But I definitely think that for at least a little while, when Chew first decided that, I was upset with him.
Don't forget you played on the South's regional team at one of the SCs as well.
Oh
You know
yeah,
that? He played for the South. Why? I don't know. Because no one else would have him probably.
that I don't even remember how he finagled that. He
He
figured it
did.
out somehow. He convinced the Kishes to allow him to play for South.
Yeah. Well, because they never had a chance to win anyway, so it kind of didn't
Yeah.
seem to matter. That was part of it.
But I do still appreciate the fact that Chu played for East Coast in the crew battle, the FC3 crew battle, and did his best and took 6 stocks. So even though he was already loyal to West Coast by that point, he still tried his best for us. So that was cool.
Yeah, and sadly, someone asked, no, I don't think it's a thing anymore, the East-West thing. Not that
Hmm.
I notice anyway. Do you feel that at all, Joan?
Not nearly as much. There's a little bit of a sense of rivalry, but it's just not nearly as pronounced as it was before. It doesn't mean as much as it used to. Like there was the East Coast West Coast crew battle at MLG, and that just wasn't the hype was kind of it was there to an extent, but I mean it wasn't nearly the same as this FC3 crew battle. There was just so much pride on the line. It wasn't yet determined who the better region was. Like, I feel like at this point it's more accepted. More people will probably say West Coast is better, and as a whole, it's probably true. It's hard to argue that the East Coast is better overall, but East Coast could still win a crew battle because more of the gods are over here. But regardless of how you look at it, I think the rivalry is not nearly the same as it used to be.
Do you know what I think a part of that is because, again, because we're older, we do things like move away or go to college or come back from college. And now the lines are blurred between, where someone is representing.
Right.
When we all lived with our parents, it was quite obvious.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean,
Who is
now
you fighting for? Whose entity are you fighting for?
Mewtwo King lives in SoCal, so would he be West Coast at this point? I mean, there's a lot of blurred lines when it comes to that. I agree. So that's part of it too. Will
All right,
crew
Sean,
battles?
did you want to go ahead?
Oh, someone asked, will crew battles ever make a big comeback? Um, I don't think that they'll make a comeback to the level that we saw at FC3 and GS2, like those levels of hype crew battles. Unfortunately, I think they'll always be a thing. People will always do crew battles, but I don't know. I feel like the level of hype that we saw for some of these crew battles back in the day might be the peak.
Yeah, I think part of it is time. Dedicate several hours of a tournament where everyone stops and watches for these regional or King Coast crew battles. I don't see it as much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Sean, how much longer do we have with our friends in the stream? Does this thing usually go a couple of hours, or
Um,
what's
yeah, I
here?
mean it's really however long you want to talk. I mean, I guess we can. I didn't have a specific time set up for it or anything like that. So I mean, as long as you're down, we can keep doing it.
I suppose there's 500 plus people here in the
Yeah,
stream, and we can keep hanging out.
yeah, for sure. So I mean, just briefly here, wife. I know that you said that you're like new to streams in general, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people would like to see you stream, man. I think that you have the ability to talk about the game, whether it's match analysis or whatever it might be. You streaming in particular. I think that people would love to see it. And if you're at all interested in something like that, you should definitely consider starting a Twitch channel, man.
I appreciate it. I don't know. It sounds like a big undertaking. I'm also technologically not so great. I like keeping things simple. I'll consider it, but in the meantime, maybe I can just make an appearance on your stream
That
time to
sounds good
time.
to me for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, see, as you can see, the chat blowing up now after I
Okay,
said that.
listen, listen, listen. I hate to do this, but it's come up a lot. The me versus Ken match. Do you want to throw it on in the background? Do you want to just put it on?
Yeah, sure. I'll pull that
Let's
up.
do that because a lot of people have asked about it, and I'll speak to it briefly. We don't have to dwell on it, but yeah, it's a big deal. I feel like it's, I mean, certainly the most prominent match of my career. One of the more stressful moments of my entire life, and I feel like that was it was what could have been a turning point in my Smash career. I think if I beat him, I think if I'd taken that last Fox stock or even that last Marth stock game 5, I think I would have been the guy who beat Ken. Certainly the Peach who beat Ken. I mean, Chillin, you've had a more successful career than I have, and people still call you the person who beat Ken at
Right.
Game Over. And if I, as a Peach, had beaten him, I think it really would have changed things. And that loss was very powerful. And yeah, it was really, really hard. I was mad at myself for losing it because, as you'll see, as you may have already seen, as people like to say, and this is dangerous language, I quote unquote had it. You know, like
Right.
it was there. If I had continued playing with the same momentum that I went into the match, then I would have won quite easily. That game three versus the Fox, you'll see that I'm up. You know, one down smash, ledge guard done. And game five, I was up, I think, a stock and a half versus Ismark. You know, all I did was just finish it. But my hands were, I mean, shaking, like back and forth shaking.
Mm-hmm.
Very nervous. And I think I wasn't emotionally or mentally equipped to deal with it. And that is why my advice to players is to go to as many tournaments as possible and always enter and always try your best. Don't say, you know, I have no chance, I'm not going to win any money, why bother? Don't win your first round match and say, well, I'm just happy with how I did. I'm just happy to be here. You know, don't throw BS statements like that around. Always play for the W because you need your experience with the difficult, trying matches. So one day when you're playing, you know, some punk like Ken and you know you can beat him, you can actually play to your potential.
Right.
So
Now
that's what
this
I'll say.
this match says Wife versus Ken Marth won, but it's on Rainbow Cruise. So how would that be the first match?
I don't know, but it's definitely one.
It is the first match.
Yeah, you don't think it was on random?
Was it on random? I thought it was just a
Dude,
counter
I
pick.
don't know. I don't
It's
know.
possible.
I think it might have been on random, but I'm pretty sure this is the first match
Oh, okay.
because it
Okay.
goes Rainbow Cruise, and then he tried to counterpick me on Yoshi's Story, which was a very very silly thing to do because that's my best stage, especially versus Mars. And then he counterpicked me to Pokemon to do Fox, beat me. I took him to FD because that's my favorite stage outside of the Peach Mars matchup, and beat me. And then I took him to Mute City, the Pocket Peach counterpick, and he beat me there again as Marth.
Right.
That's how that went.
Yeah.
Look at that ridiculous stage. I just upbeat through it.
Yeah, this stage is pretty absurd. Shout out to the Midwest. A big reason why the stage list was so ridiculous, I think, was a lot of the Midwest was adamant about many of these stages being legal. The Kishes being a big contributor to that.
What was the last tournament I played in? I play more often than you guys might think. I entered teams with my mother at Shell Shocked, where Chillin won, PS, last weekend. Ken and
Yeah.
Silence and I, our new team is called Peach and Quiet, right?
That's
I
pretty
think so,
good.
Peach and Quiet. And the weekend before, I went to a College Park tournament, and there was no team, but I did singles, and I won. I beat Brown Shirt in the grand finals, so I compete here and there.
Yeah, I remember. No, I was actually impressed. Your guys' teamwork was already really good, and your brother's not bad. He was pulling some shine spikes on us and stuff.
Yeah, his punish game is great. It's his neutral that I think takes a little longer.
Hmm.
But I think just from thinking about Melee and watching Melee, he's able to execute on the punishes, which makes him a good teammate. I think
Right.
better than singles.
Yeah, for sure.
Your neutral game doesn't matter as much in singles. All right, Chilla, why don't you pick a question? There's so many.
Yeah, there are. Let's see. Wife, why do you hate doubles? I don't think
Okay,
that's.
boom, done, boom. I love doubles more than anything. I love doubles so much that I can't bear to see it embarrassed by people not taking it seriously. I tried to make that as clear as I could in that article. That I think if we can't give doubles what it deserves, then why drag it through the mud? And for all the reasons I listed in that article, I think that we're in danger of it. I think since that article came out, as Summer of Smash happened, we've done a much better job of respecting it. I've seen some great team play. There are great teams out there. But believe me, when I go to a tournament, look at me, I'm always playing doubles. I will not play a singles match unless there's everyone there refusing to play doubles. That's for sure. I will go to many tournaments these days, enter doubles, and leave. At a stream, I'm always looking for the doubles. That is
Right.
the most exciting thing to me. But it hurts me to think that we're not giving it the attention that it deserves. And if we don't have the bandwidth to do both, I don't want to do them half-assed. I want to just do singles and give it our all. But it looks
Yeah.
like the community didn't agree with me. We're keeping doubles, so let's commit to it.
Yeah. No, I mean it's pretty clear that doubles has always been kind of the secondary event to singles, and I mean I haven't ever been like fine with that being the case, but it's just always been the case. So it's something that I would like to see change, and I would like to see the doubles metagame has so much more potential remaining than the singles metagame does. Like there's so much more to be explored there that hasn't been.
So much more.
And I would like to see doubles explored more like that, but I don't know if we'll see it happen because, like I said, just historically, it's always been the secondary event, no matter how you look at it.
Sure. And if you're curious what the future of doubles looks like, not the end, but a little bit ahead of us here in the States, look to Europe, look to Sweden. Even their individual players who are weaker, you're going to find their doubles are intense,
Right.
and they've been definitely ahead of us, which means Apex 2015 is going to be very exciting because I'm curious to see if any of our teams can beat Android and Armada. What do you think, Sheldon?
I think M2K and Hacks have excellent teamwork. I've played them with Milkman. We played at Qatar, and their teamwork is pretty impressive. I think that also their just raw skill is better. So it remains to be seen, but I think that M2K and Hacks probably have the best chance. I really like PewFat's teamwork as well. PPU and SFAT, they're super good in team, so I think they have a chance as well. But I think it'll be a really interesting teams tournament. At least it'll be more contested than like 95% of teams tournaments at recent memory that we just had a clear cut winner from the get go.
So true, so true. I'm really excited to see it. Although, do you know who I think has the best chance against the Team EGS is Plop and Hungrybox.
Oh yeah,
They're a solid team,
they're
sure,
also
but they're
super
also
good.
a good answer to the Peach Chic.
Right. Yeah, that team is really hard for a lot of different teams to deal with. The Samus Jigglypuff, it's a really tough combo if you don't know what you're doing.
Sure, and Full Leaf Mango, as the chat pointed out, of course, is a threat, but I certainly wouldn't give them likely to win. I give them, top five definitely, top three likely, but I wouldn't put my bet on them for top one or two. Frankly, I think it's going to be Plup
Yeah,
H-Box, Hungry Box. I'm sorry, Plup Box is what it's called. Plup Box, Team EGS, or the Hacks Armada team.
Hacks
They're my
M2K.
bets.
Yeah.
For sure.
So
Go ahead, please. You pick the next one.
let's see. The Smash community in my area is very small, and we only have one or two tournaments per year. How did you, or how would you suggest I go about either creating a Smash scene or traveling at your age of only 16? Well, that's a good question to me because I was 12 years old when I hosted my first tournament. I did everything myself, basically. I started from just emailing a local venue asking if we could hold an event there, and then I posted a thread on Smashboards, and I just showed up the day of with a couple CRTs and GameCubes and held a tournament. So there's really nothing holding you back from doing something like that, and creating a local scene is really key if you want to have any kind of competitive future. I think in Melee specifically, there's a lot of games now that you can play online exclusively and still get pretty good at. Melee is not one of them. There is Melee net play, but you have to have a good local scene to be able to improve. And so I think hosting tournaments, especially if there aren't many in your local area, is a great way to start.
For sure, yeah. The only exception I'll say to that, Sean, though, is say you got to do it yourself. Nothing you can't do unless you're under 18 and your parents aren't down with it, which
Right.
is tough.
Yeah, that's
Which
true.
is real tough.
That's true. I mean,
If your parents aren't down with it, I mean, you've got to show them people who've been successful at playing Smash and at winning at life. And there are good
exactly.
examples out there. Point to Zanguzan, point to Hungrybox. I'm sure there are plenty of others, but just
Right.
examples.
Yeah, for sure. I saw a good
So
question.
you gotta reverse the stigma, which is tough. And yeah, I'm definitely going to Apex. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I'll be there. They haven't announced the commentating staff yet. They haven't picked that, so I can't promise anything. But I'm definitely interested. So yeah, I'll be there. I'll see all you guys there. Make sure you go.
Someone asked, did you ever think MLG would pick up Smash again? And do we think we'll see it back in 2015? I was pretty shocked when MLG first announced that they were picking Smash back up toward the beginning of this year. Unfortunately, I don't think the event went quite as well as they'd hoped for either MLG or for Smashers. So I don't know if we'll continue to see Melee on the pro circuit, but it's not like 2006 where that spelled doom for us. We're kind of self-sustaining as a community now, where we don't need MLG necessarily. But I mean, I would like to see them come back in 2015, but they definitely would have some kinks to work out compared to MLG Anaheim this year if that was the case.
Yeah, I think it's extremely unlikely we'll see Smash and MLG again, which is a shame because I'm here to tell everyone in the chat that while I 100% get the ways that it failed, I do, and it's easy for me to say that in my position. But just as a side note, the production up front from where I was, as far as the staff, the way they treated us as staff, was top notch. They really had their shit together when it came to main stage. It's just sad that everything else fell apart. So yeah, I get it, but just as a side note, they did not care about us. Things just went poorly, but they tried.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a shame. That's a shame. I saw a good question a second ago there. Oh, about favorite commentators. Chillin, let's do that. You go
Ooh.
first, Chillin. Who's your favorite commentator?
I would say that overall entertainment factor, I'd go with TK Breezy. He cracks me up a lot. He has good stuff to say about the game too, and it's stuff that's not too in depth that you would need to have some kind of absurd level of knowledge of the game to be able to understand. So I think it's very accessible commentary as well. Damn, Ken just hit you with a crazy up air in the video I'm watching on Pokemon Stadium, but. I also really like D1's commentary. I think it's very professional and very. He was one of the first really professional commentators that helped bring it to another level.
Got it. Got it.
Oh,
Well, I
snap.
never thought I'd say this, but my favorite commentator, Mango.
Oh, wow. Really?
Just it's like he's funny, but when he goofs around and kind of just does his dumb stuff, I listen because he's Mango as well,
Right.
and so when he's making these assessments of players, I care. I think it really matters, and so it's nice that he's a pro. He knows what he's saying, and I think he's pretty funny. I like his jokes about how many Evos he's won, and again, I never thought I'd be a Mango fan.
Yeah.
Partly just because when you're also a pro, you don't really feel like you're a fan of other players. You just more respect them.
Right.
But now that I'm more of a spectator, I do.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a fan of some of the pros, and definitely a Mango fan. Gotta say.
Right. Yeah, no, I think Mango's commentary is great because he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He doesn't try to dull anything down in terms of making it acceptable or easy enough for anyone to understand. If he has something high level to say, he'll just say it, and if you're high level enough, you'll understand it. But regardless, his commentary is very raw. It's very like he just says what's on his mind, and I really like just listening to him. It's also for me like he's a good friend of mine, so listening to him commentate is kind of just like hanging out with him. Like he's kind of just
Yeah.
talking like about whatever comes to his mind. So that makes it good for me as well. So yeah, I really like Mango's commentary as well.
And he won't say, well, this person can still bring it back. Well, if anyone can do it, it's Falcon. When the truth is, there's not. There's no bringing it back. He'll just say, this is over, 10% chance.
Right.
And I like that. And I don't think we need to, like you said, sugarcoat things
Yeah.
for sure. Oh God, Swanee SSB. No, it's not too late. How could it be too late? You can start now. You can start 5 years from now. Melee isn't going anywhere, and the
Exactly.
tools are everywhere to learn.
Yep.
Everywhere. So don't ever think it's too late.
Yeah, there's only more and more tools like every day. Like Smash Lounge, shout out to PewPew, is a great
Yep.
resource for newer players. And I think that a lot of players are getting the wrong idea because people do always talk about how hard Melee is, that it has one of the highest learning curves, which is true. But at the same time, it's also one of the most fun games to learn, in my opinion, because you're even through the trial and error, you're still just playing Smash with your friends. Like it's generally speaking just a good time, and you take your knocks and you get better, but it's definitely worth it more so than most of the other competitive games I've tried. The feeling of doing something properly in Melee in a match and actually applying it after you spent so long learning it and getting good at it is one of the greatest feelings ever.
Totally. Yeah, hell yeah, I still have the West Coast dollar bill. It's right below my TV when I play Smash, so I can see it in my periphery. I'll always hang on to that.
What current team could beat Ken and Isaiah? There's quite a few current teams that could take Ken and Isaiah, even if you account for the fact that the metagame has changed so much. I think that Ken and Isaiah is a good example of an early team that embraced the doubles mentality. Husband and Wife, of course, another great example that of a team that actually played teams for the sake of teams. You know, the fact that you have another player and you can help each other out. Most teams just kind of let it devolve into two singles matches usually, but Ken and Isaiah and Husband and Wife were two early examples of that. But I think there's a lot more teams, even though that's still kind of scarce, where you see teams actually really using teams gameplay to their advantage. But there's quite a few more teams that do it now. Like the ones we mentioned earlier that are going to Apex are good examples. M2K Hacks, Team UGS, Armada and Android, and Plupbox, as well as Pew Pew and SFAT.
Someone asked the M2K question again. I'll start with that one, Chelman, and you please pepper it. When Mutaking first entered the scene, I remember him doing things like posting about rides, and I remember him at GS2. I remember very clearly being in Oro's basement, and I played him, and I two-stocked him, and he says to me, "You two-stock chillin', I'm as good as chillin'." And he said that straight face. So so yeah, I mean, of course he made some enemies early on, but two things happened. One, he endeared himself to us over time. As you spend time with him and hang out with him, he is funny and he's cool and he's got a lot of good qualities. And two, he became really, really, really good at the game. And
Right.
to be a god like that, I mean, that's he earned our respect through playing. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I mean, personality wise, he improved as well. He just like slowly but surely started to understand what to do and what not to do, like as a member of society. But in addition to that, I think the fact that he did just put in, the time to get good. He earned our respect by doing that because we recognized that initially he had already put so much time in with making the frame data list and everything. But I remember M2K being awful for how much time he had seemingly put into the game at first, because it was all practice against computers. None of it was mind game practice. It was all just how to play the game technically against computers. But once he started going to tournaments, he didn't have good results for years, but eventually he did put in the work to get there. So that in itself earned our respect for sure.
the
Skip.
most difficult team I've ever played against. I mean, I've never played against Armada, Mutaking. I suspect that's the worst. But playing Mutaking Cactuar was really, really, really difficult because they would both play defensive, or they would do it as in college, camp in front of your face, where they would just put their hit frames out and just be nearly frame perfect, and it was incredibly difficult to get through. The tournament where Cactuar took 3 stock from Dark Rain without getting hit, if anybody remembers that, that was Event 52. That was our team with Dark Rain,
Mm.
and he and I played Cactuar Muta King, and it just had our nuts in a vice. He just couldn't move. What about you, Chillin?
I probably would just have to say Ken and Isaiah. I mean, the first time I played them uh, in teams at all, I was just kind of blown away by the fact that they had this level of teamwork that was just like unimaginable to me at the time. I didn't know what good team play looked like, and I had heard from everyone, "Oh man, Ken and Isaiah, they're unbeatable." But I had my doubts. I was like, I mean, how good can they really be? But when I actually played against them is when I realized, oh, okay, these guys are super legit. And the only team that I think in recent memory has come close to reproducing that feeling for me is M2K and Armada. I played them in a lot of friendlies before SKTAR, and it was some brutal stuff. They are a super scary team for sure.
Ooh, can I pick one, Chillin,
Yeah,
for
go for it.
you? Chillin, do you have any regrets from your career?
Hmm, that's a good question. I would say my biggest regret is probably not attending more MLGs. I think if I was able, and that's not necessarily my own fault, a lot of it was because I was so young. My parents weren't always approving of me going out of state for stuff. And I wasn't able to travel as much because of that, but that's probably the biggest thing because if I had traveled to all the MLGs that year in 2006 is what I'm talking about, the golden age. I think I probably would have ended up in the top 8 at Vegas, and who knows how I would have done there. So my legacy as a player could be entirely different. I just wasn't able to attend as many singles events, unfortunately. What would
Hmm.
you say is the same question to you, wife?
Nah, I don't regret anything.
Nah. Word.
I don't think I do. I don't know. I think it was perfect. I mean, parts of it were really, really bad and hard, but
Right.
I wouldn't say I regret them. I think
The
they're all just part of it.
the overnight stay at Fade's house.
At who?
At Fade. You don't remember Fade, the Jersey guy? At
Oh my God, that was awful. Yes, I do. Yeah, Jersey. Yeah. Well, just generally the regrets that I have are going to take place in Jersey. I feel like we've had some bad happenings in Jersey over the
uh,
years. So to this day, I try to avoid driving up north. I always like driving south or west if I can.
right.
But the tolls, the highways,
Hmm.
everything's expensive, including tournaments.
Yeah, it's cold. There's a lot of
It's cold.
downsides for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No thanks. No thanks. Whew, I don't know, Chili. We've been going for about an hour. Do you
Yeah,
think
I
it's
think
a
this
good
is
time to
a
wrap this up? And
yeah. Seems like a good time to wrap up. Seems like the questions are slowing down as well. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has gone really well, and I'm sure we'll do something like it again sometime soon if you're interested, wife.
yeah, no doubt, it was great. Thanks everyone for coming and hanging out with us.
Awesome. So what I might do next time is prepare questions in advance, like maybe ask for them on Twitter or something like that, and that way we'll have a little more of a structured thing rather than just taking questions from the chat as it's happening, because it is a little hard to weed out the good questions when we do that. But either way, I think this was great. I had a lot of fun talking about this with you, wife, and thanks so much for being on, man.
All right, cool. See you soon. Take care, guys.
All right, man. Later.
Later.